All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most fascinating and secretive empires in modern history. We are talking about a wild story of ambition, unimaginable wealth, and ultimate collapse. This is the unbelievable true story of the rise and fall of the American Mafia. We're going to track exactly how they built this massive empire from the ground up and what it finally took to bring the whole thing crashing down.
So here's the massive question we really need to answer today. How on earth did a shadowy underground organization manage to completely control entire American cities? I mean, we're talking about a secret society that actively bribed politicians, terrified witnesses into total silence, and raked in literally billions of dollars. And they did all of this without a single share ever being traded on a stock exchange. It seriously sounds like a movie plot, but it was 100% real.
Okay, to really grasp how this all happened, we gotta rewind to the late 1800s. Imagine thousands of immigrants arriving in the United States from Sicily. They're chasing the American dream, just looking for a better life. But the reality they actually met, it was incredibly harsh. They faced extreme poverty, severe discrimination, and some really dangerous neighborhoods. So, out of sheer necessity and just basic survival, some of these immigrants formed secret mutual protection groups. But over time, those survival networks started evolving into something much, much darker: highly organized criminal enterprises.
And out of all of this, one single concept emerged that held this entire criminal underworld together. It was called omerta. This was the absolute code of silence. I mean, it was the most important rule of the mafia. Way above the law, above morality, above absolutely everything else. You never, ever betray the family. I really want you to remember this concept of absolute loyalty because it's the glue of their whole empire. And as we're going to see a bit later, the shattering of this exact rule is what brings the whole house down.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. From those late 1800s origins we just covered, we'll jump to the 1920 Prohibition boom, hit the 1930s when the bosses formed the Commission, and finally look at the 1970 RICO Act that brought it all down. Let's keep moving.
Okay, picture it. 1920. The U.S. government totally bans the sale of alcohol with Prohibition. But did it actually stop people from drinking? Absolutely not. Instead, it acted as the ultimate catalyst for organized crime. It instantly created one of the biggest black markets in American history. Mafia families just swooped in, secretly producing and transporting illegal alcohol all across the country. And we are talking about massive, incredibly lucrative operations. In just a few short years, this single government ban literally turned street-level gangs into millionaires.
So what do you do with all that cash? Well, you know the saying, money buys power, and power buys corruption. They weren't just breaking laws anymore. They were actively buying the legal system itself. With their new millions, mafia leaders began quietly shaping entire cities. They'd bribe police officers to just look the other way. They bought off judges. They funded local politicians. The very system that was supposed to lock them up was suddenly working directly for them. By the 1930s and 40s, we are fully in the mafia's golden age, and their portfolio of illegal businesses was just staggering. We're talking gambling rings, loan sharking, infiltrating labor unions, rigging construction contracts, running illegal casinos. It wasn't just bootlegging anymore. This was a sprawling, highly diversified empire spreading across cities like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Las Vegas. They had their hands in almost every lucrative industry you could think of. But listen, gang wars are actually terrible for business. They're loud, they draw police attention, and frankly, they cost a fortune. So the mafia leaders did something pretty smart. They got together and corporatized their crime. They created a highly secret governing council called the Commission. Instead of shooting each other in the streets, the bosses would sit around a boardroom table, settle their disputes, and divide up territories. They prioritized organized business and enormous profits over constant violence. Now, you literally cannot talk about this era without mentioning the most legendary name of all, Al Capone, Scarface himself. He completely ruled Chicago during Prohibition. He was absolutely feared for countless, brutal crimes, yet the authorities could never quite prove it. So, how did they finally get him? Ironically enough, tax evasion. Just think about the sheer absurdity of that. It wasn't some smoking gun that brought down Chicago's untouchable boss. It was mundane paperwork. It proved no one was truly invincible. Though, remarkably, the mafia just replaced him with new leaders and kept right on earning. But, you know, the golden years couldn't last forever. As we move into the 1960s and 70s, this is really the beginning of the end.
The FBI completely flips its strategy. Instead of playing whack-a-mole, just chasing down individual crimes or low-level soldiers, they made a massive pivot. They made organized crime a top national priority and started targeting the criminal organization as one giant entity.
Passed in 1970, the RICO Act was the ultimate weapon. It changed the game in three huge ways. First, it targeted the enterprise itself. Second, it held the bosses legally liable for the crimes committed by their underlings. So for the first time ever, a boss couldn't just sit back and hide behind his loyal followers with clean hands. And third, the government used that massive legal leverage to start flipping insiders.
Now think back to Omerta, that unbreakable blood oath code of silence we talked about earlier. Well, this is exactly where it shatters. The Mafia absolutely depended on total loyalty, but when high-ranking members were suddenly staring down the barrel of life in prison thanks to the RICO Act, that absolute loyalty evaporated pretty quickly. Betrayal came from within. Insiders actually started agreeing to cooperate with investigators just to save themselves.
And honestly, this is the craziest part to me. The Mafia's absolute greatest strength had always been its secrecy. But now, that exact same secrecy became its greatest weakness. Because the organization was so closed off and tight-knit, all it took was one cooperating witness, one flipped insider, to completely pull back the curtain. Suddenly, the FBI is hearing about secret induction ceremonies, hidden financial operations, and the true identities of the powerful bosses pulling all the strings. One by one, entire families were dismantled.
So where does that leave the Mafia today? Well, while they haven't completely vanished, their empire has shrunk massively. They just can't control cities the way they once did. Modern law enforcement is incredibly sophisticated now. We've got advanced surveillance tech, digital financial tracking makes hiding millions almost impossible. Plus, international cooperation between agencies is tighter than ever. The shadows they used to hide in, they just don't exist in the same way anymore.
Which really brings us to a perfect final thought on all this. The rise of the American Mafia was this epic story of immigration, staggering corruption, and immense power. For nearly a century, they shaped American history from behind closed doors. But no empire lasts forever. There's a quote that perfectly summarizes this. The same secrecy that built the Mafia eventually helped destroy it. Their legacy today is basically a huge cautionary tale. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secret empires might be operating right now, just waiting for their own code of silence to finally break?
If you love digging into these hidden parts of history with us today and you want to uncover even more amazing stories, definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. We've got plenty more explainers coming your way very soon. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.